at that point, you're not there to play it safe. Like if you're not taking risks, you're not competing.
It's empowering, I mean, anybody who's done a CrossFit workout, you finish your CrossFit workout and you're like, I'm on top of the world.
Yeah.
Like a hunger for competition and like that super intense structure, routine. I still had that desire.
Listen to the way people feel and the motivations for doing the things that they did. It was like they were describing me to a T.
I'm not trying to solve everything for you, but I know that sometimes you just need somebody to listen.
Learned the most is how to fill my cup by filling others.
Welcome to the Hungry Dog Barbell Podcast. Join me as I talk with passionate people about their life's failures and successes, and most importantly, what keeps them hungry for more. What up, dogs? Welcome back to another episode of the Hungry Dog Barbell Podcast. I'm joined by another awesome guest here. I'm lucky enough to have another CrossFit affiliate owner here. I have John Warnick on. I guess I should have asked you this before. Did you guys go through a rebrand over there? Is it Iron Cross Athletics? Is it CrossFit Phoenixville? What is the name of your gym?
So we are Iron Cross Athletics, the home of CrossFit Phoenixville.
Awesome.
So we started going by Iron Cross Athletics way back in the day when we started because we were always a little bit concerned tying everything we had in our name to really one guy. And that ended up, I guess, becoming useful at some point. But yeah, we go by Iron Cross Athletics. Most people call us ICA, but we are a CrossFit affiliate.
ICA, yeah, that's how I always refer to it too. On top of like just hearing about your gym and then having some like cross roots here, I've done the battle on Bridge Street before multiple times. That's a real fun comp. I know you guys have that coming up soon. You just made the announcement recently, right?
Yes. One of our longest tenured coaches puts that on every year, and it's wonderful from my end because I basically have nothing to do with it. He tells me what I need to do, what I need to have on hand. I show up that day and he tells me what events I'm going to judge. And Dave Bolker runs that, and he runs a heck of a show. He's one of the most organized people I've come across. Yeah,
Dave's awesome, man. He's just a good time too. He makes the like environment a really fun one when you're there to compete,
Yeah, he tries to make it a pretty laid back, fun competition. I think he does well with it.
I love having that takeaway from competitions, or even when I just go to like someone else's gym too. So John, let's talk a little bit more about you. We were just talking about how I read you were a thrower before, like in high school, then moved on to do it a little bit later on. Like, were you an athlete your entire life? Like, what was middle school John like?
Oh man, like middle school and grade school John, I was never like super overweight, but I was definitely like a softer kid. And I remember, I think I was 11, and I was just bouncing around the house with too much energy. And my dad was like, "Hey, do some push-ups." And I was a little bit arrogant, so I was like, "Yeah, I'm going to do like a bunch of push-ups." And I flopped on the ground for 3 and was demoralized. And that like started me. I didn't miss a day working out probably from then until I was like 22. Just started doing push-ups every day. We had like pull-up bars just kind of anchored around the house. So we do like constant pull-up competitions between my dad and brother and I.
Was to say, are you an only child? Where is your older brother? Just one of them?
I was the youngest by a good bit. I was the oops baby. There was my sister and brother are significantly older than me.
My brother's also, I have one brother. He's 7 years older than me, man. So I know that feeling.
Yeah, that it makes it tough to keep up with them, but it was good. It pushed me a bunch.
Yeah.
And yeah, so I got into fitness that was really the start of it. And then I just loved doing everything fitness. So in 8th grade, I was running home from school each day. It was like 2.5 to 3 miles. And a person just pulled over on the side of the road and started yelling at me. It turned out to be the middle school track coach. I didn't even know we had a track team. And she asked me to come out to the track team. And yeah, so then it turns out I was running home. I went to Catholic school. I was running home with like Catholic school uniform and like the crazy.
You grew up in this area, like in Pennsylvania?
Yes. Yeah. I went to Visitation, not too far from here.
Nice.
Yeah. And my knees blew up like halfway through that season. I was like, is there anything else I can do? And like shot put, sold. From then on, I just loved it. And I did that up through high school and through my first 2 years of college.
That's so crazy, dude. What events were you running before you went over to shot put?
I was a mile runner.
Wow.
Of all things. Yeah.
That's crazy.
Not a particularly good one, but it was all right. I was hitting sub 6 anyway, right? The really good ones were hitting sub 5 in 8th grade. And it was funny because I was this height in 8th grade. I was like 5'10", and I probably weighed 125 pounds and was just running all the time and doing push-ups and pull-ups. And then I moved to shot put and got into weightlifting and just put on a whole bunch of weight rapidly.
Yeah.
And then it was great. I loved shot put, and the technical aspects of shot put were always intriguing to me. So I really geeked out on that.
Yeah. Hell yeah. That's one of the reasons why I really love weightlifting now, weightlifting and gymnastics, like things that you can always delve deeper into, always break down even more and keep working on a more basic unit of it, So tell us more about your high school and collegiate career with throwing. Like, what are some of your biggest highlights, like memories that you love, not necessarily like the best memories,
Yeah. Gosh, I had a lot of fun. I was an upper middle of the road thrower, right? Like I would win local meets, and then if I went to a big invitational, I get stomped by someone. But it was very much, I very much enjoyed it, and it was cool. I was kind of a jack of all trades, which transferred nicely into CrossFit later on. I would throw shot put, discus, and javelin, and there weren't too many throwers that would throw all three. And then in college, I got to throw hammer as well, so I could really play around with them all. I think I did well, like in the league championships one of the years, but for the most part, like I said, upper middle of the road, I would do pretty well. And high school, I was 5'10" and 200 pounds, which is big for a high school kid, but not big for a high school shot putter. Those guys were giants. So it's pretty funny. They call me like Mighty Mouse standing in the lineup of guys, and they're all like 6'4", and then there's me. But yeah, I had a ton of fun with that. I had some really nice coaches that were very influential on me back then. A really good guy in 8th grade that kind of prompted me to push hard and keep working out. It's funny, I got to learn so much through trial and error. And one of the, I guess, fondest in retrospect memories was javelin my senior year. I didn't have a javelin coach, so I was just running up and hucking a javelin over and over again in practice. And I heard my knee pop on one of the throws. And I fell over writhing in pain and like just twisting on the ground. And I sat there for a good 10 or 15 minutes. And I just think about like the mentality of a 17-year-old boy, because after a while I was like, you know what? If I do it again, maybe whatever popped will pop back. Which is a terrible plan.
You were made to be a CrossFitter right there.
I ran up, planted my foot, popped again, and this time it hurt real, real bad. I went down. Yeah. It turned out to be a partially torn ACL. So it was, but I just remember thinking like, that's like the worst line of thought I could come up with. And I went with it at the time. And I'd like to think I've learned a lot since then, but that one does. I do remember that with some degree of fondness, just in the humor of it. But yeah, but it took me back a little while.
It's just like encapsulate what it means to be a teenage boy athlete too, So like with that story, do you consider yourself a competitive person, and how long do you think you've been that way?
Yeah, I am exceedingly competitive, but I'll say in a very positive light. Like I have no problem being beaten by anyone, and I'll throw my hat in the ring in virtually any situation. And I've gotten to throw my hat into some decent rings. And I will go as hard as I possibly can. But again, no problem if I get beaten, and I'll smile and shake it off and have a good time. I'm generally smiling at any competition I'm a part of.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's the mentality of a warrior, I guess.
That's been it since ever. The biggest competition I've been a part of recently was the Rogue Record Breakers Challenge. They did the first year they introduced it was 2020. So COVID hit, but I got to go out and do the max 315 deads in 2 minutes as like a sideshow in between the strongman competition. And that was amazing. But I got carted out there in front of, in between the mountain doing his deadlifts and everything like that. And all the people in my gym were following along and just cracking up because I just walked out onto the stage with this giant grin on my face. I'm like, yeah, man, let's do this thing.
Yeah, hell yeah. Dude, I love that. That's great.
Yeah.
It's like just loving the experience of it. Like, and some people miss out on that part when they go do those kind of things. They're so worried about like, oh, I need to perform this well, like instead of just enjoying the experience.
Oh yeah. The running joke amongst my friends is I'm more competitive than I am fit. So when you put me in those situations, I'll go all out and hopefully my fitness will keep up somewhat.
That's funny. Just full send it,
Yep.
So before we even keep moving on here, I want everyone to know out there that javelin is like probably the most highly technical of the three throws that you mentioned so far. And I went to Happel Horse. I mean, we had a pretty good track and field team, so we had a high level javelin coach there, and he would have like auditions or tryouts at the beginning of track season, and he would straight up tell some throwers they were not allowed to come back to the javelin pitch. Like, you go over there with the shot putters, the meatheads, just throw your round ball,
Yep.
So you teaching yourself is like, that's crazy,
Yeah. That was a really cool sport. And all the aspects of it. To your point earlier, like weightlifting, CrossFit, all this stuff. Even my hobbies outside of this are like fly fishing and archery hunting. It's all just stuff where you can geek out on the minute details and just try and constantly improve. And the throwing events were perfect for that.
Hell yeah. Nuance is everything,
Yep.
You can take it on either side of the parallel, like up and down, which is one of the most fun parts about the things that we do. So how did you continue on here? Like, you went to college, played sports there. What was your fitness like after that? When did you find CrossFit? Did you have any lulls in the middle of that?
Yeah. So I was a thrower up through my sophomore year. Prior to running the gym, I was a physics teacher. So my junior year, I was in 4 upper level physics courses and some nasty math class. And I was like, okay, my time for working out 3 hours a day and being part of the team is no longer really an option. So I quit the track team my junior year and just kind of got bogged down in my studies. But I, again, loved working out. It was everything I was going to do. The year prior to that, my good friend and training partner from high school, he had just gotten back from, I guess, BUD/S. He had formally become a Navy SEAL.
Nice.
And I asked him the classic question, like, hey, man, what are you benching now? Because he had put on all this muscle. He was like, I don't really bench. I do this thing called CrossFit. You probably love it. And he took me through a workout, and it was like a makeshift CrossFit workout. I was like running stairs and doing burpees and stuff. And I was just a mess after it. So that kind of piqued my curiosity. So I'd hit a workout from CrossFit.com every now and then. And that was 2005, I guess, that I started messing around with that. And then when I left shot put, I wanted to be a competitive lifter of some sort, whether powerlifting or Olympic lifting. And back then, YouTube wasn't really a thing. If it was, it wasn't anywhere near to the degree it is now. So if I wanted to be able to teach myself, it was going to be very hard to find all these videos. And back in the day, CrossFit just had a list of linked videos, just homemade videos that they made of how to walk on your hands, how to snatch, how to overhead squat, how to do ring muscle ups, all this stuff.
OG days.
So I would just go onto that and look it up and try and figure out what I was doing and piece it together. So really immediately, once I stopped track and field, I went immediately into CrossFit and just did whatever CrossFit.com told me to do for the next, 6 years, something like that. And then eventually I found CrossFit King of Prussia. That was the first CrossFit gym I ever stepped into.
So you had like that 6-year block of just kind of doing it on your own?
You know what? I bet it was 4 years. Yeah.
Somewhere around that timeline.
Yeah. And actually on my own, it's so funny. When I got out of my 8th grade track team, I started doing, 9th grade track, but would stay after to coach my 8th grade team. When I was in college, I coached a high school team. When I was a teacher, I coached the track and field team. And all along the way, when I started doing CrossFit, people would see me in the gym doing things and they'd ask me what I'm doing. I'd explain it to them. So in college, I had anywhere from 10 to 15 people that I'd meet up with every day. And I'd teach them how to do this stuff, like just barely ahead, right? Like I figured out how to do it and then I'd teach them how to do it. Yeah. And then we had this whole group just kind of rolling through. And then even as a teacher, the whole science department at Abington High School was probably about a quarter of the science department. We all chipped in and rented this nasty little garage and outfitted it with like gas line pull-up bars. Wow. And Craigslist barbells and stuff. And we'd meet up after school and work out. That's awesome. So kind of all along the way, I was always doing CrossFit and then gradually always coaching it as well. Always coaching, always teaching. Yeah. Yeah. That's crazy. So like 9th grade on, that started to develop here. Did it come naturally to just share information that you had learned with other people? Yes. And I'm not totally sure why, but even I think that's just how some people are, right? Like you geek out on other people doing well with things. So we just had a woman get her first bar muscle up Saturday morning, and she'd been working on it for a year, like putting in diligent work, doing the slow, like upper body strength work. And I lost my mind when she got it. I mean, I was so fired up, I couldn't be contained. And the people in the back of the class were just laughing at me because it's what I do. But I took so much joy in her getting that. And that's how it's always been.
That's great. That's like a great description of you, like don't just like show me competing like at these high level competitions and stuff. Like, see how fired up I get after 10 years, 15 years of doing this, and a new member gets something, that's awesome to see.
Yeah, that's so much fun.
Yeah, those are the moments.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, that's I imagine that's why we do it, right? That's why we enjoy coaching.
That's so dope. You taught at Abington High School?
Yes.
Oh, that's right by where I grew up. Yeah, I know.
I was going to say the Hatboro Horsham, we would always play against Hatboro.
Yeah,
and I was
those were some of our big rivals there. Yeah, I remember back in the day when Barry came to HH in the beginning, and he was doing similar things to you. He was working corporate wellness at the time, and then put the funds together to open the first small place. And I believe it was in Abington actually before they moved over to Hatboro. So it's crazy. All of these roots are just so intertwined.
Yeah, it's really cool, and yeah, especially amongst the old heads. Like Barry's been around since ever.
Yeah,
he's the one that started most people on their CrossFit journey.
Yeah, like so many people. He started me, and then like we've gone on to help start other people's like timelines or tenures in the space there. So as a competitive athlete, right, you start doing CrossFit. When was the first time you did the CrossFit Open?
The first one I did. It's so funny. I can remember checking the game site the year they created the CrossFit Games, and I can remember seeing him like, man, no one's going to do that. I'm not going out to California to compete in this. And like, it took 3 years before it was huge. Right.
Yeah.
So
people don't understand that right now. They think that it's just been huge forever. I'm like, no, I remember those first few years.
It was so small. And sectionals was held at King of Prussia. That was 2010, I think. So I did that, and I came out. I don't know. I've always been a very hit or miss athlete. Like, I'm fairly powerful. I am not very well conditioned. So my marks are all over the place. And so that first sectionals, I think the top 20 got to move on to regionals. And I think I was like 30th. I wasn't super close to 20th either. There was a gap between 20 and 30.
Like studs and then like the straight superheroes, that's how it usually goes.
Yeah. And but my wife, she was, I don't know, 5th or 6th that year. She got to go do it. Oh, she didn't though. That was the year we went team. That was the year that King of Prussia sent a team to the games. And I was lucky enough to be a part of that. And that was a lot of fun. And then the next year was the first year of the Open. And it was, the year we opened our gym, I think was the second year ever at the Open.
Wow.
Of the Open. And then I've done every one since. And it's pretty cool. I just went through and looked through all my previous standings. You can see the outliers of where some workout caught hold of me and really whooped me pretty good.
Yeah. It's man, I kind of take it for granted that you could go on and look at that, like I was just out for like beers on Saturday night, actually in Phoenixville with a friend for her birthday. And we started talking about the CrossFit Open and quarterfinals expanding. And she was like, yeah, like I was nowhere near close last year. Like I was 74%. And she's not a person that follows the games. I'm like, well, this year they're taking the top 25. So you're like 1% away. She's like, wow, if I like try real hard, I could qualify for quarterfinals. And we'll revisit this conversation later, but like that right there, just put it in my head. Like, that's pretty cool. Like just $20 and you could go on, see all of your progress and then like push a little bit harder and qualify for something, even if it doesn't mean much to like maybe Matt Frazier or Tia. Like the quarterfinals could be something for your everyday athlete, and it's something small, but it's important, I think.
Oh, I loved it. The quarterfinals was pretty demoralizing to me back when it was, I think, top 200.
Yeah.
And it was still cool. Like I was still going to take a shot at it, but I mean, I was finishing 5,000th or something, it was not close. And then they went top 10%, and I'm always right around that cusp. So if things go well, I can get in, and if they don't, I won't. But I remember it motivated me like crazy. It's funny. I don't think I've even taken part in quarterfinals. I think I qualified 2 years ago and did not take part, or I might have loosely taken part, because at this point, like, we have athletes that are doing it with more kind of skin in the game. So I am there to help facilitate. And if I can get a workout in, awesome. But it matters a lot less to me because, again, I'm vying for 91st percent.
You have a role that you can put in more value to if you, do something else, so that's where your priorities lie right now, which is awesome. It's going to happen for a lot of the OGs. I think we see that being the wave and the sphere that a lot of people are going towards right now, like, hey, well, one thing we'll talk about later on is the masters and like masters teams. I want to get like your opinion on a whole bunch of those things. But before we go to that point, you were saying like the first year of the games, right? Where it's out at Dave's Ranch and it's like, everyone just come out. If you could make it here, you could come compete. You gave us your feelings on that. But what about the first time you heard about the Open and an online competition? Like, what were your initial feelings on that? Did you think it was going to work? Did you think it would like people were going to cheat? Like, do you remember how you were feeling?
Oh, by that time, my views had swung so hard where I went from no one's going to go to that to I'm going, right? And,
I'm in it.
And it was totally delusional. Like I had no chance at qualifying for the games, but I was going to go really hard. And I was sold. And the first year, so many people like logged on the moment they posted the workout that they crashed the site.
Wow.
They had to postpone everything a week. So they gave everyone a whole extra week to do the first workout like multiple times over because
hell yeah,
their site was just not ready for how many people were going to do it. And each year after that, like I very much enjoyed it. And then honestly, probably 2015 to 2018, I struggled with the Open because we had at that time 2 small children. The gym was big enough to occupy a lot of our time. And the Open all of a sudden became like a really challenging endeavor because
probably the peak time, right? In that time period.
Yes, it was so hard. And the Open was like 5 or 6 weeks long at that time.
5 weeks, yeah, with real hard workouts.
And it was just rough from a logistics standpoint. And then after 2020, the infrastructure of the gym was a little bit more fluid. Our kids were a little bit older, life settled a little bit, and then it became very joyful again. And especially, I think the 3-week thing was the greatest decision they've ever made. You can find the best athletes in 3 weeks and
hell yeah,
and not burn everyone out on getting all revved up over each week.
Dude, 5 weeks, man. I look back to specifically, I think it was 2017 when the 4th week, I think they repeated that 55 deadlifts, 55 handstand push-ups. It's like doing that in a 4th week of 5 weeks is just like draining, all that hinging and then the squatting at the end, like, dude, just drains so much out of you. Oh, so hard. Then when they announced the 3 week, I was like, thank God, this is so much better.
Oh yeah. It's so fun. So much fun. The first week, there's a ton of excitement. The second week, you're still riding it. And then the third week, like it's starting to wane, but it's the end. So it's like a finale and everybody's revved up. I thought that was one of the best decisions they've made. And
they usually end with a finale too, like when they went to that 3 week thing. So it's like really good. So tell me now, like your favorite Open workout ever. What one, like you're like, oh, I love this, and I could really get after it.
I guess the one that it was probably not one of their best tests, but the one that I loved was the first year of the Open. It was 5 minutes of max squat, clean, and jerks at 165.
Yes.
And that's some of the most pain my legs have ever been in. But, and again, like it wasn't a great test, I don't think, because just the nature of
single modality,
5 weeks
5
too,
minutes.
so you're fine. Yeah. But I very much enjoyed that one. And then honestly, somewhat obscurely, the more recent one that was 19 wall balls and 19 calorie row over and over and over again for like 15 minutes. We just redid that one in our gym recently. And for some reason, even though cardio usually ruins me, that one I found enjoyable. I guess I could just kind of turn my head off and go. There's not a lot of skill in it. It's just kind of chip away.
We did that one recently here too, and it was my first time doing it because that was one of the years that I took a break from the Open. Like either I don't think I coached at a CrossFit gym or something like that at the time. And I'm not a huge cardio guy either. So I was like, this is a great workout. It's like a really good test, like for the Open here. It really hurt me, but like I could do stuff afterwards, it didn't like take my soul away, So on that note, what's a workout from the Open that just like absolutely destroyed you? Mine, like my worst case scenario, I have 2 for you. It's like 17.5, I think, the one that had the 9 rounds of double unders and thrusters. And they made that a games workout later on. And then my absolute kryptonite, I will never forget this workout. When they first introduced the dumbbell and they did the dumbbell snatch and the burpee box jump over, That took my life away. And that's one of the few workouts that I redid and did worse on. And I was like, I'm not ever redoing again. Like that workout, you could just have it, you know? So what's that workout for you?
Both of those were pretty nasty. That, interestingly enough, I was revved up to do that double under thruster one. And for whatever reason, that day had other plans. The second round, my blood sugar crashed. And the guy judging me was like, should you be stopping right now? And I was like, no.
But you're the professional, but what should you stop, you know?
But the one that got me, the one that stands out was years ago, maybe 14 or 15 range, but it was overhead barbell lunges. And then like burpees over the bar, and there might have been chest bar pull-ups.
There was a gymnastic with it, but it was one of those workouts.
Yeah, and I remember that one, it just beat me up really bad. And on top of that, it was really hard logistically in our gym to run it. So you had to lunge till you were like nose up against the wall to get the required distance. Wow. And then you drop the bar and you like roll it out of the way and start doing burpees. And I remember just genuinely being beat up by that one. That was pretty rough.
I remember that. It was one of my like first or second opens. I like those layouts like now since they become a little bit stricter with the floor plans and stuff. Those workouts do kind of scare me when I see them pop up. But at that time, I liked like moving and doing things like different places. That's a perfect segue. How do you feel about a lot of the recent changes that HQ have announced? We started off kind of already with the top 25%. Like we like that one. It gives more of an opportunity for the athletes. But something that's like being said right now is like they're trying to kill the games again. You know, we kind of lived through that before. Do you think that that is a good plan to kill the games and put CrossFit Health first, or is like CrossFit Games one of our best marketers? What's your opinion on that one?
I'll come at this from two angles. One, I think I really like putting the best in the world on a pedestal. I think that's cool. Like I'll never make the games, but I like just being able to throw my hat in the ring with the best in the world, right? No other sport allows that. But even from like a marketing perspective, like Rich Froning's abs have probably done as much for the sport as many other.
Any red shirt, right? You know,
right? Yeah, like people see him on a magazine. It's like, what does he do? And it's like, it's CrossFit, you know. And so I do think it's really good to have the top. Now, I don't understand obviously the logistics of the finances behind it, and I'm hopeful they don't take it away. Just because it's a cool community builder. It's a cool way to get people on the outside to see the sport, right? If you start putting it on ESPN, more people are going to see it. And then selfishly, we have a young lady at the gym that's very competitive and has been very good to this point. And she is so focused on going to the games. And it would just be a crime to see someone who has dedicated so much of her life already to it that have that just robbed on one random day because they decide to shut it down. But I'm aware they could do it.
Yeah, for sure. That's part of, the mysticism of CrossFit. It's supposed to be grassroots and stuff like that. So smaller branding. And so sometimes things have to go by the wayside. Now, like speaking of having competitive athletes, right, and the CrossFit Games season, do you think that the process and layout is, I don't know if easy is the right word, or easy to follow for someone like, especially a teen athlete that's trying to make it to the top levels? Like, are instructions clear in the open? Is the layout like easy to set up for people that like probably can't do this full time? Like, are steps clear for the next process, quarterfinals and semifinals? How do you feel like about as like a coach of an athlete?
So having put her, our young athlete has gone to the games 2 years in a row in the teenage division, and has gone to Wadapalooza 3 years in a row now. And we've done a couple of other qualifiers as well here and there. And I'll say the Open does a very good job of laying out expectations. That is really helpful. Like Wadapalooza, I love the event. It's a ton of fun, but the qualifier is terrifying because you don't totally know what they want you to do. Yeah. They're not super clear on some of their standards. And the problem is, like, you did your workout, you submitted it 2 weeks later, they're going to judge you on it. It's too late to do anything about it, right? So if you did something wrong, you're just out laying down expectations on what you're supposed to do. The challenge is with any of these online competitions is exactly what I said before, where if you are doing something wrong and you're missing it, by the time it is discovered, it's too late to do anything about it. So I know like my athlete will do anything I ask her to do, right? If I need her to face a certain way for the camera, if I need her to use a wall ball target that she doesn't usually like to use because it's better for filming, she'll do all of that. So then it kind of shifts the pressure onto me in my mind of, if her video is invalid for any reason, it's probably something that I did. And that stuff messes with my head a little bit. But I think they're pretty good. Like, we've never had an issue, but it is something to see a teenager's like emotions of like, I don't even know if this counts. I don't know what is acceptable and what's not. Most of it's pretty standard, right? Like your hip crease goes below your kneecap. Okay, that's pretty easy. But like the standards on like the farmer carries, and you can't quite see their foot from the camera angle where you are, which is way far away. It's like,
Yeah.
I know she went over the line. The video may not look like she went over the line, but when I was standing there, she did. And that's way across the room. That stuff spooks me. But I mean, I think they're pretty reasonable in understanding that it's a limitation. And I don't think it's one you can get around very easily.
Yeah, it's not a perfect world. So, you know, they're trying to do the best they can. And we all hope that the best is clear and present for everyone every time they step up to play. Now, this year, they're going to change the teen version of the finale, the CrossFit Games for the teens. What are your feelings on that? Or I should say, what were your first feelings when you first heard the announcement?
I'm very much of the mindset that I operate within this framework that I have no control over. So I'm going to do what I can with what's given to me, right? So in this case, like, I don't get any say in what they do with the games. I will say, I think the cool factor of like warming up next to Tia Toomey is irreplaceable. That is just so cool for the kids to share the same athlete village as the elites, and like the camaraderie that's there. And that's going to be missed. The thing I don't miss, and I should be cautious in saying this, but Reese hasn't finished outside of the top 10 in a qualifier since the first 2-month shot where she did CrossFit, which 2 months in is when she hit her first open. So now that it's 30 going, the intense pressure of like making sure everything is perfect kind of comes down a little bit.
Yeah.
Which is kind of cool, because now, so this year we're going to take a real hard shot at adult semifinals for her and see, you know, where she stacks up in that realm, and understand we can take risks there that we otherwise probably wouldn't have taken if they were only bringing, you know, a select few through the ranks for the teens. But now we can take some shots. So more people in the field. And I do like statistically to have a lot of people in the field, because I think you start to hone in on better overall athletes at the very top when you have a larger field, so that if someone has a significant weakness, that gets, I guess, penalized more. And if you're strong at everything, it's even more impressive.
Yeah. It's like we said, you try to do your best, right? And then when you get to this point, it's how precise can you be? You know, the required precision is the field shrinks as the field shrinks. You know, it's like throwing a dart at the dartboard. You want to get the highest level points. You get like very little that you can miss. So what about for you? Like, where they're opening the field up more for masters, like, would you throw your hat back in the ring, you know, like buckle down and try to make it there?
I think if I went really hard and dialed in my nutrition and focused more on sleep and really focused on my training, I think there's a chance I could be top 1,000 in the world in my age group. And that's a far cry from.
And that's about it. And all those things are all the things you sacrifice as a business owner. So
yeah, so I'll take a swing at it, and I imagine I'll come out somewhere between the 88th and 92nd percentile, which seems to be where I come out most years, and then I'll have a whole bunch of fun. We have a intramural style, as most gyms do. So I just sent out the email to the team right before this podcast, kind of rallying the troops and getting everybody ready for this Friday. So that's going to be my focus.
Yeah.
I like being in it, but
that's all of our opens, right? The intramural open, beating your buddy from last year.
Yes. Fun fact, a guy that I knew from like preschool, I haven't seen him since preschool, and his name has been popping up in the open repeatedly at one of the local gyms, and I've been watching him. He's pretty good. It was
that's fun, dude. That's a really good time. So a lot of my buddies from high school, they like, matriculated into CrossFit over the years, so I started seeing their names on the leaderboard too. And I'm like, okay, I see you. I got you in week 2. I'm coming for you, stuff like that. So let's talk about the old days a little bit more here before we wrap it up. Like, you guys win as a team, 2011 at the CrossFit Games. Was that 6-person year back then?
That was 6. Yeah, that was a 6-person year.
How was that experience for you? Like, any biggest takeaways from it? Like, any biggest learning lessons from the games?
The regionals that year was just an unbelievable amount of fun. It was in some like random field. So we had to do a max snatch in just a grass field where they hadn't cut the grass in quite some time.
Let's go.
And it was like wet from the night before.
Yes.
And everything about it was just that, right? It was like just a mess, a bunch of people hanging out.
That's so fun. Imagine telling people these days that, oh my God, they would throw a fit if they showed up to an event and that was going on.
Oh, it's crazy. And I felt bad. Like, strategically, I knew I could do some stuff in that snatch event that like you would never do in good conscience in a competition. But it was basically like, I knew I could throw a split snatch and just drop my back knee right into the mud and it wasn't going to hurt. So everybody else that had like really good snatch forms getting wiped out doing it in the grass. And I was like, I'll just close up my grip a little bit, get a little press out at the top, drop my knee.
Get it going. Hell yeah.
But that was an unbelievable amount of fun. And then going to the games was really incredibly inspiring just to watch the people. That was the first year Froning was in it, but he couldn't climb a rope to win the last. He lost the last event and then lost first place overall because of it. And watching that, I came back really renewed and ready to go after it. But honestly, the next year I feel like is where the rest of the field stepped on the gas. And I put in a whole bunch of work. I was in the best shape of my life. And I think I went from like 59th in our region to like 600th or something ridiculous. Like that's where it really blew up. And I was like, whoa, this is serious now.
Yeah, it's awesome to see how everyone else gets fitter every year too. You work real hard and you're like, oh, I'm crushing it. And you see like more people do it and you're like, oh, these people all got fitter too. This sucks.
Yeah.
Like, you guys are supposed to take the year off so I can do better this year. It's crazy.
Yeah, they got fitter and then it drew more people in, and all of a sudden you've got these like former Division I athletes that were really competitive and they're out of their sport. And now you're seeing some of the best athletes in the world take their shot at it. That was cool. It was also cool statistically as it got larger to see like the idea of Fraser, Toomey, and Froning winning so many years in a row. Mathematically, that's something else. Like to win by the margins that they did, that's hard.
Yeah, to live at the edge of a percentage for that long, right? Like, you are in the 1% of the 1% for years extended. Like, and all the things that go into that, just fathoming that is like a whole lot,
Yeah, it's really cool to see.
Yeah. So you said that you lived a life for a long time where you always were doing some kind of teaching. It kind of came natural to you too. What about being a business owner? Like, when did that start to develop? When did you start to think you want to open your own gym? And like, how was the beginning of that process?
Yeah, that it kind of made sense to me that I was going to end up in a gym in some capacity just because everything that I was doing was coaching based. I really enjoyed it. And then it's so funny, when I was in college, I think CrossFit Philadelphia opened up. I think it was called CrossFit Philadelphia at the time. And I remember thinking, I'm like, oh man, I missed my chance. That's going to be the Pennsylvania CrossFit. And lo and behold, there are many CrossFit gyms in Pennsylvania, but at the time I thought that was going to be it. And then I was teaching out in the middle of the state and I moved to Abington to teach. And I sat through a discussion with the principal. And the answers he gave that gave me an idea of where education was heading just didn't sit well with me. And I went home that night and booked my level 1 seminar. And I was like, I've got to find a way to eventually get out of this. I very much enjoyed teaching, but kind of the admin end of it was going to be a challenge. And I very much am grateful for that because it seems to have come out the way that I thought it was. And then I actually, once I dove into it some, I kind of realized I was like, oh, I have no business running a gym. I don't have the organization. I don't have that skill set. I'm pretty good at teaching someone how to lift. And my wife actually wanted to open the gym. And I remember right before we opened, I'm like, look, Nikki, I'll back you up any way I can. I'll build the equipment. I'll coach the classes, but I can't run the gym. I just don't have that in me. And she's like, that's fine. That's my skill set. She's hyper organized. She's very gifted that way. And then she built out enough procedures and systems. And I'm like, oh, I could do this. Like this, if you set it up so nicely for me, yes, I can in fact do this.
That's awesome to find that partner like that, right? You know,
it was huge. Like it was, and the plan was always for her to leave her job. And then a few years in, we were both still working our full-time jobs, and it became evident that one of us was going to have to leave, and it ended up being me. So I got dropped into the gym, and then there was a long learning curve of me understanding the difference between being able to coach someone on a squat and running a business effectively. And it's something I'd imagine I'm still very much learning about day to day, but
yeah,
I enjoy it.
That's the best way to go about things, right? You always want to be a lifelong learner, you know, because when you feel like you have learned everything, then the learning ceases and you're just stagnant at that point, you know?
Yeah, it gets boring and more than likely you haven't learned everything. So you're missing stuff. And, you know, so yeah, I've gotten to learn a whole bunch, especially I'd say since COVID has been the biggest magnifier of where our shortcomings are and were. But it also was a nice reset because we were given 3.5 months to change anything we didn't like and come up with new systems. And after that, I think a lot of our members will tell us that COVID was the best thing that ever happened to our gym. Things cleaned up a lot after that.
Yeah, you guys have expanded since then, right? You guys opened up another side to the gym, got more members. Like, how was it coming out of COVID for you guys?
I'd say COVID and immediately after was quite challenging. No gym was like, yes, this is great, you know?
Right. This is the best time ever.
Yeah, that was very difficult to manage. But our classes had gotten very large prior to that. We'd have up to 22, 23 people in a class, and the original room that we had was not conducive to that. And it was, looking back on it, was very difficult to coach. We'd only have one coach on for that class, and it was not effective.
Yeah.
So then we went to the system where everyone has a squat rack, a rower or bike, a set of high gymnastics rings, a pull-up bar, you know, a whole lot of space to themselves. And now everything got more enjoyable to coach, because now if you want to do ring muscle up progressions, you can have everyone set their rings at the same height, put bands across them and practice, you know, whatever you want. And then that became a lot more enjoyable. It came with its own logistical kind of headaches with weightlifting classes and kind of holding hard caps on the classes. That poses its challenges, but in the long run, I'm very grateful for that change that we made.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's taking being prepared to the next level, you know, every single time. Yeah. You taught people how to move and everything, but what was it like to then go teach coaches how to coach? You know, even if not being on seminar staff, you still have to bring people on as a business owner and have employees. So how has that process been for you over the years?
I'll say, again, prior to COVID, pretty helter-skelter, right? Like we would bring people in that had a good personality and were kind of clear leaders in the community. And then I was very much of the mindset that I want them to coach to their style and be as good of a coach as they can be. But I gave so little framework within that. I knew how I wanted a class run, but I wasn't even clear in conveying that. And I had a very good friend and mentor that to date is one of the smartest human beings I've ever met. And he dropped the line on me years ago. And he said, John, I know you think you're special, but the sooner you figure out you're an algorithm, the better off this whole place is going to be. And at the time I was like, nah, I'm special. And then I put more thought into it. I'm like, oh yeah, here are the things I do well. Here are the things I don't do well. How can I make all of our coaches do more of these things that I do well and do less of these things, you know? And once I was able to put kind of a clear thought process to it, I think everything got a whole lot better again. There's just way more clear expectations on like what the warm up is going to be and how that class is going to run from a timeline perspective. And now we're diving more and more into like more in depth. So it's hard in my mind to impart very deep knowledge to coaches on like, there's one thing about seeing the basic points of a deadlift, but there's another thing about just nitpicking every little piece of it and trying to identify things on a very advanced lifter, and then right behind them a person that's never deadlifted before.
Yeah.
So we've started holding these coaches clinics where I actually go around and video athletes in the gym of a lot of different kind of common faults that you'll see. So the first one we did was just on snatches, and just tried to get coaches comfortable with, okay, a really advanced lifter, here's what we can look for. Here's kind of the low hanging fruit that even the most advanced typically still struggle with. And then the next one coming up is going to be deadlifts and toes to bar. And again, I'm compiling videos and just kind of that I think that's what we've gotten feedback from our coaches has been very helpful. It's going to be very time consuming, right? It's 3 years from now, we will have a really solid library of work, and everybody will continue developing. But in the meantime, it's like, it's not like teaching everyone in a 2-day long thing. It's all right, we're going to hyper focus on 1 or 2 things for a night and then forget it. Let's move on to the next thing 3 months later and let's hyper focus. And so that's our newest initiative. And
that's awesome.
I'm hopeful that's going to work out.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, it's a lot of change from that teenager who was throwing the javelin, like with no plan. Like, let me just see this. Let me just do this and see what happens. Like now you're very well thought out, methodical in how you're going to approach things. And like we talk about the seminars, and they're great to get people started, and then they're great to touch base again on like how your coach is going. But like just deep diving on one thing, teaching someone like, hey, this is what you can focus in on, like no matter what kind of lifter or what kind of athlete walks past you, like honing the coach's eye. That just comes through repetitiveness, like doing it over and over and over again. So that's really great. Like a lot of people, they have the knowledge, they give a fuck, that's what CrossFit tells you to do. That's where you start off with, just caring and stuff, but then they lack the relentlessness to keep going back and keep working on someone, like I find myself failing on that all the time. I'm like, damn, like I know you watched that guy move for 4 years, but if you coach him, if you cue him right now, he will lock the barbell out,
Yep.
And some of us, the best of us fall back on that. So
absolutely. I caught myself walking past one of our coaches in class the other day, and she's just a phenomenal mover. No one's a perfect mover, right? But I just walked by her and I was like, all right, go back. Because I know the last week I walked by her and I didn't give her anything. And for her, I like had to pull out my camera and video her lifting, because I'm like, I can't see anything live time. So let's slow this down and see what's happening.
It's good to have tools,
Yes. Yeah. But it to that point, it's so easy to fall into, I'm used to seeing this person for the last however many years. And then, that is one of the best things to me about any of these CrossFit certs is like, yes, there is a wealth of knowledge. I learn a ton every time, but coming away with a renewed sense of like, I'm going to fix stuff. I'm going to be relentless. That was the
light the fire,
Yeah. That's one of the best things for me in those courses.
It's always great. So at the end here, I think I have just 2 last questions for you. This first one is like, Nikki, you said has helped you with a lot of planning and being more logistic minded. Do you have any like processes that you go about to, I don't know, if you need to start planning for something, maybe you're trying to get your creative juices flowing. Do you take notes? Do you journal? Do you do anything like that to kind of empty your brain?
I'd say my brain moves exceedingly quickly, if not tremendously accurately, right? So there are issues there.
Throw a lot at the wall and see what sticks.
Yes. And I can remember going through these like brutal physics exams that they'd give us 2.5 hours for, and I'd be done in 15 minutes. And it wasn't that I aced that test, but like I was able to go through 8 different potential ways of answering the question very, very rapidly. Which serves me well when I'm faced with a problem, right? It often takes me a while to identify a problem within the gym, but I'll see a problem, something that I don't like, something that I think we can improve. And then my mind just starts racing kind of uncontrollably for several days, right? And that's where I'll start. If I get to the point where there's enough branches to that solution that I need to organize, I usually just go into and make a spreadsheet and come up with like, hey, here's 5 different things that I think are possible solutions. Let's go right down the list of here's the biggest pitfalls in this one. Here's the biggest benefits. Here's the likelihood of it being successful. And then eventually, usually several of those branches lead to some sort of kill switch. And then I'm left with only a couple of real options. So that's probably the process. And
getting better at refining it down, right? Just like we're talking about with the coaching thing. Like, okay, like now these are all the options I have to try to counteract that here. These are the ones that actually make sense. These are the ones I could get done. These are the ones I could get done in the time frame that I want to, like going through that process.
Yeah. And my brain just kind of races through hypotheticals of, all right, what's the worst case scenario, best case scenario? And that I'm really grateful for the time I spent studying some of those classes, like the physics labs, where you just had to identify every possible variable and everything that could or could not go wrong. That was really helpful now that I'm in this setting where some problem gets posed. And sometimes I take it too far, though. Sometimes I need to step back and just let someone else do stuff.
We all do. That's always Amy's feedback. That's what I got at the level 2. Hey, just like get to the point,
I just took a whole toilet apart in the gym and like took it off the base and like it's like so funny. I probably should have just hired a plumber, but I just geeked out. I'm like, I bet I can solve this quick and just I got it done, but my time probably would have been better served doing something else.
Do it some kind of other way, literally. And I'm sure this happened to you too. My level 2, when the instructor, literally, I was doing my circle breakdown and she's like watching the clock the whole time. I'm like, I know what she's going to say to me, like faster to the point, take a step away out of your progressions. I'm like, fuck,
I got ripped apart for that, man. I went so long on that.
Yeah, it sucks. But that it made me a better coach, I took the progression away. I was like, I'm gonna do this faster in my class. So then at the end here, John, question I ask everybody, when you're 4 years removed from COVID now, like good standing at the gym here, athletes that are starting to progress on, do well at competitions and stuff, like what are you hungry for right now?
I'd say kind of short-term and long-term. Short-term, I really do geek out on coaching Reese through these higher level competitions. I have never been challenged so much as a coach as having to refine every little thing. So doing everything I can to help her get to what she wants to do, that is pretty much on my brain these days. And then I'd say bigger picture, I used to be a teacher. I've coached young teens and whatnot in the past. We have a pretty fun teen program at the gym. One of my long-term goals is to basically make our entire teenage program completely free. And I want to have it be like after school and later evening, to the point that people just come directly from the local high school to the gym and then make them stronger and faster. Because while adults, they can kind of formulate their own thoughts and they can decide what's going to be good and bad for them, I think teens have less choice. I don't like saying that. Every teen can make a choice. Every teen in any situation can make a choice, but it's harder. They have different influences. But if they can see a clear path toward getting stronger and faster and healthier, it's amazing. And to your point, Max, in your gym earlier, right? When you see that fire lit in a kid, that changes their life, right?
Yeah.
And now Max, like his parents are awesome. So that kid was going to be in a good spot. But if you get kids that aren't in a good spot and you can light that fire, you can drastically change the course of their life. So we have like our Thursday nights are totally free, and I almost have to like keep it under wraps because anytime it gets talked about, it floods, which is cool, but we need to be able to actually run it.
Yeah.
And there are several steps to be taken where we can have a class like after school every day and just have kids get there and become monsters. And I think there'll be many steps between here and the program being entirely free, but we are starting to take them, and I'm really fired up for that. I think 4 years from now, I would guess we will have like a really, really cool program running.
It's amazing, dude. Back in the high school, college days, were you ever a person that thought in like 4 year time frames, like 4 years out from the day that you were living?
Yes, but weirdly so. I'm weirdly motivated, man, and
it's awesome.
But when I say weirdly motivated, not like excessively motivated, I'm motivated by strange things. So in this case, I can remember planning out my whole life, my senior year of high school. And I would like to fish as much as I can. So I'm like, okay, what job do I need to do to fish as much as I can? And I was like, I'll be a teacher. And I was like, okay, what will be the easiest teacher job that I can get so that I can choose where I want to work and be able to fish for whatever I want to fish for? And physics teaching was the easiest job that you can get as a teacher. Yeah. And that was the framework. That was exactly the path I went down. And and it worked right up until we opened the gym, and now, you know, the time gets taken up with other things. But
you found something else, you know, that you're super passionate about. That's great, man. Well, I am super happy that kids out there in your area have you as a mentor, especially with the last thing you just said right there. My brain goes to that a lot too. Like, hey, Z is what I want to accomplish. I need X and Y to be able to have Z. So this is what I'm going to go do. And I try to formulate my plan from there. But yeah, John, it's been an awesome conversation, man. Thanks for coming on and talking with me today.
Yeah, thank you, Taylor. Been a pleasure.
Yes, sir. John, listeners out there, have a great rest of your day. I'm off to get back to coaching. Peace.
Yes, see you.
I'm going to end this recording.